guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Elizabeth. I make mom and lifestyle videos, so if you enjoy that kind of content, make sure you subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for your support. Today I want to introduce you to the newest member of our family. She's sleeping. Don't worry, I have plenty of B-roll. There you go. This is our little girl, Elena.
Joey.
We both really liked the name Elena. It was basically the only name that my husband and I both liked, so of course it's perfect. For her middle name, it's kind of a family name on my side. It's actually a name that two of my family members who are very dear to me were named after a great aunt. And unfortunately, I was pretty young when she passed away, but I remember her being the most sweet, kind-hearted lady that pretty much anyone had ever met. So her middle name is after three people in my life that are very important to me. Elena is now 9 days old, so I wanted to just give a little bit of an update about what's been going on in her first 9 days. I will make a birth story video, so definitely keep an eye out for that. So Elena ended up being born 5 days late, and she was still just a small little baby. She was only 6 pounds and 7 ounces. I definitely thought she would be over 7 pounds since she was 5 days late, but nope, still just a small little peanut. We have newborn clothes for her, and she is still swimming in her newborn clothes. But we've been having her in a onesie and then either with a blanket or a little swaddle over top. So that's not really a big deal. We ended up just staying one full day at the hospital, so about 1.5 days since she was born, very early morning. We had thought about staying the full 2 days. We just kind of wanted to see how we were feeling. And then there ended up being a big snowstorm forecast, which we didn't even end up getting as much snow as they called for, but we were a little bit worried about the road conditions. Since she was looking fine and she did good on her 24-hour test, and I was feeling so much better than I had with Dominic, I ended up having quite a peaceful birth and didn't tear nearly as bad as I did with Dominic, so I was able to recover much better. So I was feeling pretty good by our second day in the hospital, and everyone signed off on us leaving a day early. And then the day we were home, we were like, if we were still in the hospital, this would basically be torture because we feel so much better at home. So I'm glad that we just stayed the one day at the hospital. I want to talk about food for a minute because I've heard it said that giving birth is similar to running a marathon, what your body goes through. I was so hungry after. When I was pregnant, I would usually eat kind of a small breakfast, a small lunch, a couple snacks, and like a normal sized dinner. And after I had her, I got a huge breakfast. I ordered like all the sides that you could. I got an egg sandwich, potatoes, bacon, oatmeal. No, I got grits, coffee, and juice. And like I could have eaten even more. So a couple hours later, I was hungry for a huge lunch again. I ordered a really big lunch, big dinner. And then cravings. Oh! I haven't had too much of cravings since she was born, but my mom and I have been watching the Great British Baking Show, and on one episode they made brownies. And I was lamenting how I consider myself a pretty good baker. I've made all kinds of things: cakes, cookies, pies, cheesecakes. Actually made my own cheesecake recipe, tiramisu, scones. Almost everything that I've ever baked has turned out fantastic. But brownies, I cannot make brownies from scratch. I've tried probably 3 or 4 times, and every time it's not just like, oh, these brownies are okay. It's like, these brownies are terrible. The last time I made them, I didn't even think that I cooked them too long, but I must have overcooked them because they were dry and they just tasted like bitter and bad. But after watching the Great British Baking Show where they made brownies, I was inspired to try and make them one more time. And I'm like, if these turn out terrible, I will just know that I am doomed to not be able to make brownies from scratch, but we'll see. So I looked up a few different recipes. I found one from Sally's Baking Addiction. Pretty much every time I baked one of her recipes, they turn out really well. So if you are looking for a good baking blog, I recommend Sally's Baking Addiction. The one thing that I did a little bit differently is instead of cocoa powder, I had cacao powder, which has different acidity levels. It's less refined. It will absorb a bit more liquid. The recipe called for 2 tablespoons. I cut that back to 1.5. These brownies turned out amazing. So I'm like, okay, Finally, it's not just me. I must have just not been using good recipes. So I'm so happy that I made homemade brownies that turned out amazing. I usually just make box brownies that turn out pretty good. And the key is you never bake as long as the recipe says. You always go like 10 minutes less. Might need a little bit more than that, but at least check it at 10 minutes before it says, or they will get overdone. So they're gonna cook for a few more minutes after you pull them out of the oven. You don't want overdone brownies. Anyway, enough about brownies and back to baby stuff. She did well in the hospital. She did good on her jaundice test. She passed her hearing test. She had her first checkup with a pediatrician on last Wednesday, a few days after she was born. She did good at that as well. Just a tiny bit of jaundice, which most babies get at least somewhat. She didn't even have as much as Dominic. Dominic had it a fair amount. Luckily not enough that we had to treat. The pediatrician could tell just by looking at her she didn't even need to do a billy ribbon test. I had some struggles breastfeeding Dominic. I had low supply due to insufficient glandular tissue, so I was never able to make enough for him. We ended up doing both breastfeeding and then supplementing him with formula for the rest of what he needed. It was about half and half. With her, I'm hoping to be able to exclusively breastfeed, but just having a second baby helps produce more glandular tissue, and I've done a couple things to try and help my supply. She hasn't had any formula yet. She'll have another checkup with the pediatrician in a few days, so hopefully she will be gaining enough weight that we can stay with that. But also, if I do need to feed her formula, I'm totally fine with that. It was a lot to process emotionally and kind of figure out what was going on with Dominic, but I was able to process that with him, and if I do need to supplement formula with her, I'll be totally fine with that. But there are good signs. Her not having hardly any jaundice is a good sign that she's getting enough to eat. She's had multiple poopy diapers over the last few days, so that's another really good sign. Also, after she's done nursing, she pretty much always seems satisfied, not like she's still hungry. So those are all good signs. Like I said, we'll see at her checkup if she is gaining a good amount of weight and kind of go from there. I'm editing this video a few days later, and I just wanted to pop in and say that Elena had a weight checkup when she was 11 days old. She was 6 pounds 6 ounces, so within about an ounce of her birth weight. The doctor wanted her to be back up to her birth weight by 2 weeks, and that means she's been gaining almost an ounce a day. So the pediatrician was very happy with that, and I'm very happy with that. She hasn't had any formula yet, seems to be gaining weight very well, and content with nursing. We scheduled another appointment for her for when she's a month old. The pediatrician says as long as we don't have any issues between now and then, we won't need any more weight checks, as long as everything seems to be going well. My toddler Dominic is doing really well with her. He was so confused when I first came home from the hospital. We actually had kept Elena separate so I could go see him first and make sure that he got plenty of attention from me. But when he first saw me, I didn't have my bump anymore, and he was really confused. He doesn't say much yet, but he just gave me this look of, where did your bump go? He was very excited to see me. That was the first time I had been away from him for a whole day. And then after he got plenty of attention from me, we introduced his little sister to him. He hasn't been around little babies really at all in a while. So he was a little bit confused, didn't know what to think about her at first, but he was petting her hair. He loves to pet her hair. He didn't realize that she was not a toy, so there were a couple times where he started to get just a little bit rough, so we just separated them. But now for the most part, he just ignores her. Otherwise, he'll try and pet her hair a little bit, or sometimes he likes to touch her toes, but he is very good with her. Here's a video of when they first met.
This is your sister. It's your sissy, Dominic. It's your sissy, that was Mama's bump. You wanna come up? Come on up, you can come up. You can catch, baby. You can come up. Here, I'll help you. Do it. Come on. You have to be gentle, okay? Gentle. Yeah, good. This is your sissy. Yeah, that's her hair.
That's how Elena's first 9 days postpartum have been. As for me, I am recovering so much better than I did with Dominic. It took me probably 3 or 4 weeks after Dominic's birth to feel as good as I do now, 9 days postpartum. So I'm very grateful for having a much more peaceful birth and less traumatic. That is about everything for our first 9 days postpartum. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe.